Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome back to our summer campaign of Arkham Horror, the card game, where we're playing through the Circle Undone campaign. First of all, before we get too much further into the video, as you can hear, yes, I've got the air conditioner on because it is going to get very hot very quickly here. So, yeah, I'm going to try to keep myself cool as best I can. But anyway, last week in The Secret Name, we picked up 3 experience along with a mental trauma apiece, and Carolyn added the Black Book story asset to her deck. We've upgraded their decks with that experience. Link to that video will be in the description down below. So now let's get into this week's scenario, the Wages of Sin. Before we set the scene for the Wages of Sin, for those of you following the deck lists on ArkhamDB.com, links are always in the video description down below, you might have noticed that there's a message on the Agnes deck list about there being too many copies of a card by title, now 2 coming out of the most recent batch of upgrades. That message is actually incorrect, and I have a ticket open with the people in charge of ArkhamDB. So if you're following the deck list there, you can disregard the message. The deck is completely legal. With that minor detail out of the way, let's start by setting the scene for this scenario.
Scenario 4, The Wages of Sin. Ever since your encounter with the ghost in the witch house, you have been forced to reconsider everything you know about life and death. Keziah Mason died over 200 years ago, but her spirit remains in the spectral mist, the same mist you encountered in Joseph Meiger's manor. One question lingers in your mind as you consider the events that have transpired. Does Keziah's spirit linger because of the mist, or is the mist caused by her presence? Which is the disease, and which the symptom? The more you delve into Arkham's history of witchcraft and persecution, the more restless you become. Night after night, you are assaulted by terrible dreams, dreams of death and decay, of guilt and sin. There is an evil that dwells in this city, an evil that has long remained hidden in the darkness of Arkham's past. What's worse, your inquiry has reached an impasse. You believe that if you can find the coven of witches you saw in the woods that fateful night, you might be able to learn more about Keziah Mason or of this unspoken evil. As you go through your morning routine, your eyes drift across one of the smaller headlines of today's newspaper. Ghost sightings on Hangman's Hill? Residents of Uptown claim to have seen human shapes in the thick fog emanating from Hangman's Brook. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Then the realization dawns on you. If it is witches you seek, the only place you can be certain to find them is 6 feet underground, in the place where professed witches were executed all those years ago. Searching for specters in a graveyard may not be your safest bet, but you're not sure one can stay safe in this city anymore.
Could you ever really stay safe in a city like Arkham? Anyway, with that out of the way, let's go through the rest of our scenario setup. So, once again, Agnes will be our lead investigator, so we'll take a look at her hand first. For her hand, I'm actually pretty happy with it for the most part. So we definitely are going to be able to do a lot of fighting things with her this game. So we'll start off with a copy of Shriveling Level 0. As you recall, it uses 4 charges. As an action, spend a charge to fight. This attack uses will instead of combat and deals +1 damage, and if you pull a bad symbol, take 1 horror. Then we've got a copy of Spectral Razor, which, as you've seen before, lets you add your will to your combat value for this attack. Immediately before the attack, you may engage the attacked enemy. This attack deals +1 damage, +2 instead if the enemy is non-elite. Storm of Spirits on the fighting front. This is her AoE spell. Fight, again, using will instead of combat. And if she succeeds, instead of standard damage, you deal 2 damage to everything at your location. Any additional damage goes to the attacked enemy. If you pull a bad symbol, deal 1 damage to each investigator at your location. We also can do some investigation things. So we've got Read the Signs here. Similar to Spectral Razor, this lets you investigate, adding your will to your lore instead. You get to ignore any effect or keyword on your location, which triggers during the investigation and get 1 additional clue. And we have a copy of Hypnotic Gaze in her hand. 3 cost to play, fast play when an enemy attacks an investigator at your location. Cancel the attack, then reveal a random token from the Chaos Bag. If it's a bad symbol, deal the attacking enemy's damage to itself. Carolyn's opening hand. We finally get to give this a little bit of screen time, so Hypnotic Therapy. 2 cost to play, will, lore, and wildcard on commit. Carolyn Fern deck only. As an action, exhaust Hypnotic Therapy, test will 2. If you succeed, heal 1 horror from an investigator at your location. Then, that investigator may draw 1 card. As a reaction, after one of your other card effects heals horror from an investigator, Exhaust Hypnotic Therapy. That effect heals 1 additional horror. Then we have a copy of Pathfinder. 3 cost to play, Agility on Commit. As a fast action, during your turn, if you're not engaged with any enemies, exhaust Pathfinder to move to a connecting location. Spectral Razor, which Agnes just went through, so I won't go through that again. Logical Reasoning, 2 cost to play, 2 will on commit. Play only if you have 1 clue. Choose an investigator with it at your location, either heal 2 horror or discard a terror card from their threat area. And Clarity of Mind level 3. 2 cost to play, 2 will, icons on commit. Uses 4 charges. As an action, spend 1 charge, heal 2 horror from among investigators at your location. Alright, then we will then we'll go through the agenda and act next. Agenda 1A, The Hanged Man 12. Surrender yourself to the path of sacrifice. Consider the good of all before you act. Let go. We need 8 doom to advance that. Then our agenda, or our act I should say. Act 1A, In Pursuit of the Dead. You have come to Hangman's Hill to investigate reports of ghost sightings and strange activity in the woods these last few nights, and to learn more about the witches who once hid in Arkham's past. Witches who have since emerged from the shadows in pursuit of some unholy purpose. Locations can't be flipped over. So what is that last part about the locations being flipped over? Well, as Agnes and Carolyn move over to the map, we'll move over with them, and I'll explain a little more about that. Alright, we're over here at the map. As you can see, all of the locations actually start off revealed, but that's slightly misleading because they're actually double-sided. I won't get into what the other side is until it actually happens, but there is something else on the back that's going to be very relevant to the scenario. So let's take a look at their starting location. Hangman's Brook. For Shroud, 2 clues. I had pulled the clues off already. As an action, resign. Whose bright idea was this anyway? Originating from a natural spring near the peak of Hangman's Hill, the narrow, shallow brook fills the surrounding weeds with its quiet, peaceful babbling. The brook winds down the hill southward, forming the western border of Arkham's uptown district. Okay, so we'll get the clues there. And like I said, I will go through each separate location as we move to them, rather than going through them all at once here. So, now with that all set up, we'll jump into our first investigation phase, and we'll lead off with Agnes. For our first action, we will go ahead and try to rip those clues right off of Hangman's Brook. And we're going to use Read the Signs to try to do it. So, I paid the 2 resources for it. So we'll investigate adding her will value to her skill for this investigation. We can ignore any keyword or effect that would trigger. If we succeed, discover 1 additional clue. A grisly future is laid before you. Do you turn away, or do you embrace it? So, her lore is 2, her will is 5, so we're at 7, which puts us up 3, trying to get both clues. +1 gets us both clues. So that's a very nice start, Agnes. Then for her second action, we'll make sure Miss Agnes can defend herself as we spend her last 3 resources for her first copy of Shriveling. So we'll get the 4 charges for that here in a second. 1, 2, 3. Oop, trying not to drop one. 4. Come on. There we go. Alright, there are her 4 charges for Shriveling, which I'll put on the spell. And then for action 3, I'll bring Agnes up to... Let me get the connecting arrows as well. Alright. Let's see. So our connections go... Come on. There we go. Alright. Let's see. Connections go here. Here, right? Yes. those two connect. That connects here and here. I need 2 more arrows, it looks like. Here, here, and here. Yep. Oh, I need 1 more also for this connection. Okay. Now for action 3, I'll bring Agnes up to the Haunted Fields. So let's take our first look at Haunted Fields. I've already flipped Agnes's mini over because that will end her turn. Shroud of 3, 4 clues. Each spectral enemy at Haunted Fields gets +1 horror value. Few creatures call the wooded fields surrounding Hangman's Hill home. Patches of dark, pointed witchweed blossoms have choked out all other flora, and wisps of thin gray fog seep through the air like long fingers reaching out for something to grasp. And it's got victory 1. So we'll have to get to work on the clues there. But anyway, that will do it for Agnes. Carolyn, as her first action, we will spend 3 resources to play Pathfinder, which will get her moving. Searchers after horror haunt strange, far places. H.P. Lovecraft, The Picture in the House. So we'll play that. Then as a fast, I will exhaust that to bring Carolyn up to the Haunted Fields. I'll keep them together for the time being. Action 2. Action 2, we'll take our first look at Hypnotic Therapy in action. So there's Hypnotic Therapy. It was from her opening hand. Then Action 3, I will exhaust it to test Lore 2. So Carolyn is up 2. That will be her third action. So up 2. A +1 is going to let me heal 1 horror from an investigator at my location, and I will heal that from Agnes, actually. So Agnes will also get to draw a card. She will draw Heirloom of Hyperborea. This will be a skill commit later, most likely. But we'll take a quick look at it. Will, combat, and 2 wild cards. Only damage and or horror from player card effects can be assigned to Heirloom of Hyperborea. Fast action after you play a spell, draw 1 card. 3 and 3 on soak, and it takes the accessory slot. And then because of Carolyn's special ability, Agnes also gains a resource coming out of that. So that will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, again, it's the first round of the game, so there are no enemies in play yet. Most of the time that will be true. There will be some scenarios that will have you start off with enemies in play, but this isn't one of them. Anyway, that will do it for the enemy phase. So now as I reset everything, we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. We're back up top for the upkeep phase. Each of our ladies will gain 1 resource. Carolyn will go to 1, Agnes will go to 2. Agnes will draw. Another read the signs. Okay, this might be helpful in getting those clues off the location. Carolyn will draw. Fingerprint kit. We are not or near the resources to be able to pull that off the to play that, but anyway, that's basically a 3 charge deduction in her hand slot. But anyway, that will do it for the upkeep phase. Mythos phase. Doom on the agenda goes up to 1. Then Agnes will draw. Vengeful Witch. Spawn 3s across the board. Humanoid Witch. Spawn either at the gallows or heretics' graves. Alert Hunter. When Vengeful Witch is defeated, deal its damage and horror to each investigator at its location as direct damage and horror. 1 and 1 on soak. So I'm going to spawn this at the... gallows. Now, before I draw Carolyn's card, I do want to talk a little bit about the direct damage and horror. So the way that works, I know most of my audience does play the game already, but I know some of you don't. So the way that direct damage in horror works is normally when you take damage or horror, you're able to assign that to any ally assets you might have in play as well. Direct damage in horror, just like it sounds, you have to take any of that yourself. So you aren't able to assign that around among your allies. But anyway, just a quick clarification on that. Carolyn now will draw another Vengeful Witch. Oh dear. We'll spawn this at the Gallows or the Heretic's Graves. I'm actually going to put this at the Gallows. Oh, these are both hunters. Yeah, I just noticed that. So, I think we're probably going to need to move away from these for at least the time being. But, alright, so I will spawn that at the Heretic's Graves. Anyway, that will do it for the Mythos phase. Investigation phase up next. We'll start off with Agnes, and her turn will take us over to the map. Agnes is over here at the Haunted Fields. For Action 1, she's actually going to take the damage this time to play her copy of Read the Signs. So unlike down at the at Hangman's Brook where we were up 3, this time we are up 4. Trying to pull 2 clues off the location. Rune. Alright, the rune is -3. If you fail, trigger the forced ability on a copy of Unfinished Business in your threat area as if it were the end of the round. Fortunately, we don't fail, and we don't have any copies of Unfinished Business in the threat area. So we'll grab 2 clues off of here, which brings Agnes up to 4. And then because we took the damage to play Read the Signs, we reduced the cost by 2, and we get to shuffle it back into her deck. Alright, we'll give that one more shuffle. And a cut. And then that was Action 1. Action 2, I'm going to move her over to the Abandoned Chapel. Let's take a look at the Abandoned Chapel. Shroud of 2, 4 clues. During the Mythos phase, each investigator at Abandoned Chapel gets -1 to each skill. This old, broken-down chapel has been abandoned for several decades now. Perhaps it was a place of sanctity. These days, it is only a source of sober melancholy. Victory 1. Okay. Then for Action 3, we'll run the actually, for Action 3, we'll draw a card. And Agnes will draw. Dark Memory. 2 costs to play. Place 1 doom on the current agenda. This effect can cause the current agenda to advance, aka the Ancient Evils Clause, if you hear me call it by that name. Forced. If Dark Memory is in your hand at the end of your turn, reveal it and take 2 horror. No, not again. So, yeah, this is the end of Agnes's turn, so she will have to take 2 horror. I also need to get that out of her hand pronto. Alright, that will do it for Agnes. Carolyn, we're going to stay right here. Action 1, she's going to investigate. Unfortunately, she's only up 1. But let's see if we can get a clue here. Hey, look at that. A 0 gets her a clue. Action 2, we'll run that back. Still up 1. -2 says no way. Action 3, we will run that back again. Because I'll have a fast action coming out of her last action that I'm going to use to get her back over to Agnes, so the eventual witches don't land on her. Skull. -X, where X is 1 plus the number of copies of unfinished business in the victory display. So right now we have 0 copies, so it's a -1, which does give us the last clue and our first victory. And as a fast action coming out of Carolyn's last action, we're going to exhaust Pathfinder and move her over to Agnes at the abandoned chapel. Anyway, that will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase. Both of our eventual witches are hunters, so they'll move to the haunted fields. That will do it for the enemy phase. We'll start readying everything here. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. We're back up top for the upkeep phase. Carolyn will gain 1 resource and go to 2. Agnes will gain 1 resource and go to 3. Agnes will draw. Hypnotic Gaze. Again, fast play when an enemy attacks an investigator at your location. Cancel the attack, then reveal a random token from the bag. If it's a bad symbol, deal the attacking enemy's damage to itself. Carolyn draws. Solemn Vow. Myriad Fast. Play Solemn Vow under the control of another investigator at your location. As a fast action, if the owner of Solemn Vow is at your location, exhaust Solemn Vow. Move 1 damage or horror from a card you control to a card that investigator controls. Okay, we will probably be using that this turn, if I had to take a wild guess. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Mythos phase. Doom goes up to 2. Agnes draws. Racked. Put Racked into play in your threat area. You get -1 to each of your skills during the first skill test you perform each round. As an action, test Will 3. If you succeed, discard Racked. If there is an exhausted witch enemy at your location, this test is automatically successful. Oh joy. Carolyn will draw. Diabolic Voices. Test Will 3. For each point you fail by, discard 1 random card from your hand. For each card you can't discard, take 1 or 1. This test gets +1 difficulty for each copy of Diabolic Voices in the encountered discard pile. The infernal wailing and cackling rattle endlessly through your mind. Okay, let's take a look here. Oh dear. For this turn, I need to protect Carolyn's hand as much as I can. So, Problem is, like I said, I need to protect Carolyn's hand as much as I can, but I don't want to give any of this up. I think I'm actually going to commit logical reasoning, just because that's sensitive to me having at least 1 clue. That's the most restrictive of the bunch. That puts us up to... Is there anything Agnes wants to commit? No. She's in as much of a bind as Carolyn is. Anyway, up to... Alright, a -1 protects us from Diabolic Voices, so that's welcome. Move that to Carolyn's discard pile. That will do it for the Mythos phase, thankfully. Investigation phase next. Speaking of Carolyn, she will be first and will start her turn at her play area. We're back over here with in Carolyn's play area. As a fast action, before we take her first action, we're actually going to play her copy of Solemn Vow under Agnes's control. So, and then Agnes will immediately exhaust it to move one of her horror onto Carolyn's investigator card. Then for action 1, we're going to spend Carolyn's 2 resources to play her Clarity of Mind level 3. So we're going to give it 4 charges. As an action, spend 1 charge to heal 2 horror from among investigators at your location. From the unreal, lead me to the real. From the darkness, lead me to the light. From the dead, lead me to the immortal. So we'll get the... I'm actually going to get 2 charges for that because our other 2 actions are going to be using 2 of those charges. So we're going to heal everybody's horror. So Agnes and Carolyn will both be clear of theirs. They'll both gain a resource. Carolyn will go up to 1. Agnes will go up to 2, or up to 4, I should say. I can't do first grade math. Then the other charge will clear Carolyn's other 2 horror and give her a resource to bring her up to 2 resources. So, yeah, that will do it for Carolyn. Next up will be Agnes, and we will move over to her play area. Alright, we're over here with Agnes. As her first action, we're going to pay 2 resources and tell Dark Memory to get lost from our hand. Then action 2, we're going to try to get rid of Racked. Unfortunately, we're -1 to our first skill test during the first skill test we perform, which is still up 1. I'll commit the Heirloom of Hyperborea to go up 4. Skull, as we saw, is -X, where X is 1 plus the number of copies of unfinished business in the victory display, which right now is 1, so Racked gets discarded, and then Heirloom of Hyperborea goes away as well. Actually, that's not an end of turn thing, is it? Or end of round. I didn't realize we had the 6 clues, so we will go ahead and spend the 6 clues to advance the act. I should have done this earlier, but hindsight, as they say. So there are 6 clues. Act 1... Okay, so... let's take a look at Act 1B. The barrier between... Soft chanting guides you to a gloomy clearing near the abandoned chapel. A circle of witchweed surrounds the clearing, swaying gently in the breeze. At the center of the clearing, a cloaked woman kneels in front of an unmarked grave, far from the remainder of the graveyard. You watch in quiet for a few minutes while the woman sings an old, somber melody. It reminds you somewhat of a child's lullaby, soothing, but with a dark gravity that betrays its purpose. As soon as the song ends, the woman's cloak dissolves into mist and she vanishes in a swirl of shadows. Spawn 1 set-aside heretic enemy at each of the following locations: the Gallows, Heretic's Graves, Chapel Attic, and Chapel Crypt. Add 2 per investigator clues, so 4 clues to each of those locations. Add 2 clues to each other location. Check the campaign log. If you have 3 or more mementos listed under Mementos Discovered, you understand the tragic lyrics behind the witch's song. Each investigator puts into play 1 set-aside spectral web asset under his or her control. So we spawn each heretic. Before I shuffle these up, we'll take a look at one of these heretics. So, heretic, 4, 2, 3. So 4 combat, 2 health, 3 evade. Heretic gets +2 per investigator health, so 6. While Heretic is at a non-spectral location, it gains aloof and can't be engaged or damaged. Action, spend 1 clue to parlay. Look at Heretic's other side without reading its text, or without resolving its text. So you get to flip it and look at what's over there so you can figure out how you need to deal with it. Forced, after Heretic is defeated, flip it over and resolve the text on its other side. So we'll give these a quick shuffle. And a cut, and I'll do the clue and spawning off camera. So we need to put one at the gallows, at Heretic's graves, at the chapel attic, and the chapel crypt. Okay, and then check the campaign log. If we have 3 or more mementos listed under mementos discovered, and I think we have 3. But I wouldn't swear, yes, we do have 3. Okay. So each investigator gets a copy of Spectral Web. Right? Yes. Okay. So we understand the tragic lyrics behind the witch's song. Each investigator will put one of these into play. So a Spectral Web. As an action, investigators at your location spend 1 to 3 clues as a group. Fight. Use this ability only to attack a Geist enemy. You may choose to use your will in place of your combat for this attack. You get plus X skill value and deal plus X damage for this attack, where X is the number of clues spent to trigger this ability. So both Agnes and Carolyn will get a copy of that. All right, let's take a look at our new act. Act 2A, In Pursuit of the Living. With the mist comes the remnants of the past, witches who were executed hundreds of years ago, and whose hateful spirits have returned to wreak vengeance upon the living. If you can banish them, you might learn more of the Coven's secrets. As a fast action, flip your location over, group limit once per game, group limit once per round at each location. Clues can't be discovered at non-spectral locations, so maybe I should have waited on that. Objective, banish as many heretics as you can. If there are 4 more copies of unfinished business in the victory display, advance. So I guess now we just spend some time setting up. But I talked a little bit about non-spectral locations. So that's actually what I was trying not to get at earlier, because these locations the location that we started with will all flip into spectral versions, which will also change the encounter deck when that happens. So we have 2 encounter decks that we have ready. We have a non-spectral encounter deck, and we have a spectral encounter deck. And the way we determine which deck we draw from is by what the type of location we're at. We've been drawing cards from the non-spectral encounter deck because we're at non-spectral locations. Once we flip these over, then we'll be drawing from the spectral encounter deck. So that'll probably make more sense when it actually happens. Then action 3, I will have Agnes draw a card. Agnes will draw. Draw into the flame. Draw the top card of the encounter deck, then discover 2 clues at your location. Alright, that will do it for Agnes. And the enemy phase will take us over to the map. We're over here for the enemy phase. Both of our vengeful witches are hunters. So they're going to move over and we're going to split them up. 1 to Agnes, 1 to Carolyn. So each of our ladies will take 1 and 1. 1 damage for Carolyn, 1 horror. And also 1 and 1 for Agnes, which will bring her up to 3 damage. Anyway, that will do it for the enemy phase. We'll reset everything over here. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. We're back up top for the upkeep phase. Coming into the upkeep phase, we actually do have an open player window, which I've never worried about before, but this time I'm going to. Because we're going to go ahead and actually flip the abandoned chapel over. Let's see what it flips into. Shroud of 2, and we've already got the clues there. Haunted. Until the end of the round, you get -1 to each skill. In life, malfeasance. In dying, reconciliation. In death, reverence. So that location has already been flipped over to its spectral side, which means we're now drawing from the spectral encounter deck. I mostly want to do that because I'm thinking I'm going to try to discover clues if I can. Assuming Agnes is able to do the work of clearing these vengeful witches. But anyway, Carolyn will gain 1 resource, go up to 3, as will Agnes. Then Agnes will draw. 4 of Cups. I wish I had this earlier in the game, but alas. Get +1 will. When the game begins, if 4 of Cups is in your opening hand, put it into play. Then Carolyn draws. Liquid Courage. Uses 4 supplies. As an action, spend 1 supply, choose an investigator at your location to heal 1 horror, then that investigator tests Will 2. If the test succeeds, he or she heals 1 additional horror. If the test fails, he or she discards 1 card at random from his or her hand. Okay. Mythos phase. Doom on the agenda will go up to 3. And now remember, we're drawing from the spectral encounter deck. So Agnes draws. Terror in the Night. Terror spectral. So before I go into the card, let me explain how I separated the cards out into a non-spectral or the spectral deck. If the card had the spectral keyword on it, that means it's part of the spectral encounter deck. Anything without it doesn't have that. Anything without that keyword is in the normal encounter deck. So that's how the two are different. Revelation. Test Will 4. If you fail, put Terror in the Night into play next to the agenda deck. If you fail by 3 or more, Terror in the Night gains Surge. If there are 3 copies of Terror in the Night next to the agenda deck, discard them and each investigator takes 3 horror. Yuck. Alright, we are up 1. Does Agnes have anything she wants to commit? She does not. How about Carolyn? Carolyn is also similarly short on will she wants to commit. So, up 1. Skull is once again 1 minus number of copies of unfinished business, so Agnes is clear of that. Carolyn draws. Fate of All Fools. Peril. Revelation, she has to decide, choose 1. The only option we have is to put Fate of All Fools into play in your threat area. So we have to put that into play in Carolyn's threat area. Anyway, that will do it for the Mythos phase. Investigation phase next. We'll start with Agnes, and we'll start down at her play area. Alright, Agnes, we really need this to go off. We really need your turn to go off without a hitch. So, for action 1, we're going to spend your 3 resources to play Storm of Spirits. We'll aim at the witch on you. So this is an AoE spell to do 2 damage. We are up to... I think that is where we'll test. So up 2. +1 deals 2 damage to both witches. So 2 damage to this vengeful witch, and then 2 damage to that one. Then for action 2, I'll use a charge of Shriveling to try to take the witch on her out. So that puts her up 2, and I think that's where she'll test. -1 takes out the Vengeful Witch on Agnes. Then for action 3, I think we'll spend another charge of Shriveling to try to take out the witch on Carolyn. So, once again, we are still up 2. Rune is going to cause a misfire. Most likely. So yeah, -3. If you fail, trigger the forced ability on a copy of unfinished business in your threat area as if it were the end of the round. Unfortunately, she does fail, which means Agnes takes a horror, and Carolyn takes the 2 damage that we were going to be trying to deal to the Vengeful Witch. Which reminds me, I did forget about the Vengeful Witch. When it's defeated, deal its damage and horror to each investigator at its location as direct. So actually, Carolyn is in a very bad way. At least in terms of damage. So she's at 4 and 2. Agnes is at 4 and 3. So we do need to be careful about that. Anyway, that... oh dear. I'm going to have Carolyn move off before she fights it. But that will do it for Agnes. Now I'll move over to Carolyn's play area. Oh, this went sour on us in a hurry. So Carolyn will have to try to evade the Vengeful Witch. Oh boy, wait a minute. Alert. Son of a... Alright, so... yuck. Action 1... Alright, it's not going to retaliate, so... I will spend 1... I will just try to punch the Vengeful Witch. Actually... No, let's do this. I'm going to spend 2 resources to let Carolyn play Spectral Razor for the first time in this campaign. So she's at 5. She's up 2. Agnes will commit a copy of Hypnotic Gaze to put Carolyn up 3. Skull, once again, is 1+ copies of Unfinished Business, so fortunately the Vengeful Witch is defeated. That's a relief. Action 2 will investigate up 2. +1 gets us a clue. Then action 3 will... Actually, we will use Clarity of Mind instead. We'll heal 1 horror each from Agnes and Carolyn. Then I will exhaust Hypnotic Therapy to heal an additional horror, and I'll take it off of Agnes. So actually, she should be at 1 coming out of that. And then they both gain a resource from Carolyn's special ability. So Agnes will go up to 1, and Carolyn will go up to 2. Anyway, that will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, our heretics are not hunters. I'm just double checking that. They're not hunters. So we don't have to worry about that. Which means we can start resetting everything here. And then we'll move back up top. Let me just double check the end of... okay, we did get that out of her hand. Then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Once again, I did forget to deal the Vengeful Witch's damage to itself, or to the investigators. So Carolyn is now 1 damage from defeated by damage. Her sanity is in pretty good shape. Agnes isn't so roughed up, but yeah, the damage has been flying fast and furious this scenario. Getting 2 Vengeful Witches at the start of the scenario didn't help anything. Anyway, Agnes will go up to 2 resources in the upkeep phase. Carolyn will go to 3. Agnes will draw. Ward of Protection, so now we can say nope to something if we need to. Fast play when you draw a non-weakness treachery card. Cancel that card's revelation effect, then take 1 horror. Carolyn will draw. Emergency Aid. This is very welcome. Choose an investigator at your location, heal 2 damage from that investigator or from an ally asset he or she controls. Yeah, that is a sight for sore eyes right now. But anyway, hopefully the Mythos won't won't give us the finger on that, but let's find out. Because Doom on the agenda is going up to 4. And we're still drawing from the Spectral deck. Agnes draws. Burdens of the Past. If there are no copies of Unfinished Business in your threat area, Burdens of the Past gains Surge. So there are no copies in your threat area, so that gains Surge. Shapes in the Mist. Surge. Revelation. Resolve each haunted ability on your location. Is that... No. It can't be. Just my imagination, surely. Oh, fantastic. So, till the end of the round, you get -1 to each skill. So I will take this extra action token, and I'll put it over on the location to remind myself that Agnes has to resolve the haunted ability on the location. So right now she's -2 to her skills. Coming out of the Mythos phase, she'll be -1 for the round. I'll put that in my threat area to remind me. Then this is still Agnes's card. She draws. Oh my god. Realms of Torment. Revelation. Put Realms of Torment into play in your threat area. Forced. When your turn begins, resolve each haunted ability on your location. Forced. When your turn ends, test Will 3. If you succeed, discard Realm of Torment. Good grief. Carolyn draws. Bane of the Living. Peril. You must choose one. You must either choose one. Choose an unfinished business card in play, flip it to its heretic side, and place damage on it equal to half its health, or discard cards from the top of the Spectral deck and counter deck until a Geist enemy is discarded. Spawn that enemy engaged with you. Oh, for crying out loud. So we have to choose the action that changes the game state, which will give us a new Geist enemy. I'm just discarding. Here we go. A Wraith. 2s across the board. Forced. When Wraith is defeated by damage, except from a spell or relic, instead of discarding it, attach it to its location. Attached location gains Haunted. Spawn Wraith at this location. And we have to spawn it engaged with Carolyn. Yikes. That kind of went sideways on us pretty quickly, but that will do it for the Mythos phase. We're into the Investigation phase next, and unfortunately, Agnes will have to start, and her turn's going to take us down to her threat area, or to her play area. We're over here with Agnes, and we're in quite a quandary here. At the start of her turn, we have to resolve the Haunted ability on the Abandoned Chapel. In this case, we are now -2 to her skills for the round. So, the question is, do I try to take out the Wraith, or do I just leave it to beat on Carolyn for a few turns? The Wraith only does 2 horror, so I could probably let that beat on Carolyn for a little while. But I don't want to let it beat on her for too long, because I do need, well, I am going to need to take it out eventually. And being down 2 skills is not, or being down 2 skill value is not a good thing. So I think for action 1, I'll go Drawn to the Flame to try to get some clues. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should venture voyage far. H.P. Lovecraft, The Call of Cthulhu. So coming from the Spectral deck, Agnes draws. Resolve each haunted ability on your location again, and it's got Surge. Fantastic. Another Wraith. Fantastic. We do get the 2 clues, but that's at best cold consolation right now. Action 2, that just dropped us down to even, which is very disgusting. Yeah, Agnes cannot let that Wraith, unlike Carolyn's Wraith, Agnes can't let that beat on her, so she's going to try to use a charge of Shriveling on it. And I'm such an idiot, because I could have stopped the Shapes in the Mist. And you know what? I actually am going to rewind that. And I'm going to stop it. Because this has gone way too bad right now. I'm gonna spot myself a little bit of a rewind on that. So I'm going to take the Horror. I'll discard Shapes in the Mist, so I'm not looking at everything going sour on me. And I'm gonna shuffle the Wraith back in. Normally I wouldn't do that, but I just put us in way too bad a spot if I don't do it. So I'm going to stay up 1. So I'm only -2 on my skills this round. Fantastic. So that gives me action 2. Alright, I did take the Horror for that. Action 2. I will draw a card. Agnes will draw. Clairvoyance. Where were you about 5 turns ago? Well, 4 turns ago, actually. But this is her investigation spell, where she uses will instead of lore. Then action 3. Oh, dear. Action 3. I will try to take out the Wraith on Carolyn, which I'm up 1 trying to. A -1 actually takes it out, and so the Wraith is dead, which means that thing is gone. We don't have to attach it to the location, thank God, because that was getting ready to go sour on me in a hurry. That will do it for Agnes. At the end of the round, she has to test Realm of Torment. She's even trying to get rid of it, and Carolyn will spot her Liquid Courage to bring her up 1. -1 thankfully gets rid of it, so we don't have to worry about that coming up, hopefully. I shouldn't say that's the last time we'll have to deal with it, because I think there's at least another copy in the encounter deck, but that will do it for Agnes. Carolyn's turn will take us over to her play area. We're back here with Carolyn. Before I jump into her turn, I just wanted to give you a quick update. So I mentioned earlier in the video how there's a ticket that's been open with the people in charge of Arkham DB about my parallel Agnes deck list. Turns out the issue has been fixed, so now everything's working correctly. The message on there is completely gone. So I also tested everything, and everything works fine. So issue's been fixed, I can confirm it, and I did test it out. Anyway, back to the scenario. Action 1 will spend 2 resources to heal Carolyn for 2 damage, because she is in a very bad way, and I don't want her to just bite it when an enemy does damage to us. So that's action 1. Action 2, we're going to use her last charge of Clarity of Mind to heal Horror from both Carolyn and Agnes. Then we'll exhaust Hypnotic Therapy to take another Horror off Agnes. So they'll both gain a resource coming out of that. Then for action 3, Carolyn will draw a card. She will draw Rational Thought. Revelation, put Rational Thought into play in your threat area with 4 Horror on it. Horror on Rational Thought may be healed as if it were on Carolyn. If there's no Horror on Rational Thought, discard it. You can't heal Horror from cards other than Rational Thought. You can't gain resources from Carolyn's reaction ability. Wonderful. Alright, anyway, that will Action 1, heal horror. Oh no, Action 1 was emergency aid. Action 2, heal horror from clarity of mind. Action 3 was drawing a card trying to find rational thought. So that will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, the heretics are still not hunters. So we'll reset everything. And then we will move back up top for the upkeep phase. We're back up top for the upkeep phase. Both of our ladies will each gain 1 resource and go to 3. Agnes will draw. Voice of Ra, gain 1 resource, reveal 3 random tokens from the Chaos Bag. For each bad symbol revealed, gain an additional 2. Carolyn draws. Hallowed Mirror, you do not know how much you are welcome right now. Forced, after Hallowed Mirror enters play, search your bonded cards for 3 copies of Soothing Melody. Add 1 to your hand, shuffle the other 2 into your deck. When Hallowed Mirror leaves play, find each of those copies of Soothing Melody, even if they're out of play, and remove them from the game. That will do it for the upkeep phase. Mythos phase, Doom goes up to 5. Agnes draws. Trapped Spirits, test Agility 3. For each point you fail by, take a damage. If your location is haunted, as an additional cost for an investigator to commit 1 or more cards to this skill test, he or she must resolve each haunted ability on this location. That basically translates to we're even trying to make this test. So, that will bring us to... So we have to test this at even. Rune is, oh boy. Rune is -3. If you fail, trigger the forced ability on a copy of Unfinished Business in your threat area as if it were the end of the round. Unfortunately, the -3 brings her down to 0, which means we fail by 3. So for each point we fail by, take a damage. Agnes just got defeated by damage, so she's out of the scenario. Carolyn draws. Realm of Torment. Oh joy. Revelation, put Realm of Torment into play in your threat area. Forced. When your turn begins, we saw this with Agnes earlier, so Carolyn now has to deal with it. But that will do it for the Mythos phase. Investigation phase is up next, and Carolyn is now all alone. So we will start at the map. Okay, this scenario is basically a lost cause at this point. So for action 1, I think we're just going to get out of here. So action 1, we're going to move down to Hangman's Brook. And then action 2, we're going to resign. Generally, I wouldn't do that when a scenario has gone like that, but generally what I find is if a scenario has gone sideways on you, it's better to resign than suffer additional trauma. So with Agnes now at 3 trauma, we're going to have a big we're going to have something that I'm going to have to kick around over the course of the week. But anyway, once again, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's move back up top to wrap the scenario up. We're back up top to resolve the scenario. Now, before I get into scenario resolution, the audio recordings won't reflect this, but there was an errata in the latest frequently asked questions guide on the Arkham Horror card game website. The audio recordings will say, if no resolution was reached because each investigator resigned, proceed to resolution 1. If no resolution was reached because each investigator was defeated, proceed to resolution 2. The first line, that if no resolution was reached because each investigator resigned, that should read, If no resolution was reached and at least one investigator resigned, proceed to resolution 1. So we're going to proceed straight away. In fact, I'm not even going to play the audio recording of that. We will proceed straight to resolution 1.
Resolution 1. Rays of faded sunlight stream through the haze, and the unnatural mist finally recedes. As it does, Hangman's Hill returns to its original state. No other spiteful ghosts emerge to haunt you, and the witches who summoned them have retreated into the shadows once more. You hope that you have done enough to prevent the rest of Arkham from succumbing to this horror. In your campaign log, record X heretics were unleashed onto Arkham. X is the number of heretics and enemies in play. If it...
Alright, so yeah, that went very ugly. So we unleashed 4 heretics were unleashed unto Arkham.
Instead record 4 heretics were unleashed onto Arkham. If X is 3 or less, record Wisp of Spectral Mist.
Right, X was... Oh, no! X is 3 or less, so we actually don't get the memento. I was about to record
Each investigator earns experience equal to the victory X value of each card in the victory display.
Which is called a goose egg. So we have no experience. But because we suffered another trauma, I do want to talk a little bit about one house rule that I've got about trauma. So when the investigators start getting a little too beat up to continue, usually the number I set it as is 3 trauma. Because 3 trauma is where it's somewhat recoverable, but you're basically coming in busted up. And it's not going to take you too long to end up getting taken completely out. So if we get that trauma too high, I usually wrap the campaign. I'm going to try not to do that on any channel campaigns, but it's going to be very tempting here, especially if I take another trauma in next week's scenario. So that will do it for Wages of Sin. There's not going to be an upgrades video because there was no experience to upgrade with. So that will do it for this scenario. Next week we'll head into our 5th scenario, for the greater good. And at that point, I'll have to make the decision of, is the campaign going to continue, and if so, how? And I'll let you guys know about that at the end of next week's video. Thank you for watching this video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure you turn on notifications as well so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.